So here's the deal. What I like the most about the JBL HDI-3600s, it's the fact that they don't sound like this. Welcome back to New Record Day. My name is Ron. If you are into two-channel audio, consider yourself an audiophile or music enthusiast. Welcome home. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you know when the next video drops. So in today's video, we're gonna be taking a look at the JBL HDI-3600. These were sent out directly from Harman, and so I do wanna just take a minute and thank Harman for sending these out. I certainly do appreciate it. All of my thoughts and opinions, they are my own. Nobody is paying me to say anything here, so rest assured, I'm gonna tell you exactly what I think about these speakers' performance. Now with that being said, if you're interested in sound clips, I do what's called sound clips with commentary, and I feel like I do a pretty good job with it. And the benefit of the commentary is I'm gonna tell you what I'm actually hearing in the room, and so those two things combined, a really good recording with my commentary, that might be useful and it might help you understand where I'm going with this review. Something else that I want to mention is you can support this channel through Patreon if you'd like, and there's other ways to donate. If you're not into Patreon, that's totally cool. We do weekly Zoom meetings now, which is really cool. So every single week on Sunday we get together and we hang out and we chat. So consider it. I appreciate it. Let's move on and tackle the JBL HDI-3600s. I want to start with the waveguide because this is one of the biggest features about this speaker, is that we do indeed have this, fancy waveguide. This is all about what is called controlled directivity. So we have frequencies that are beaming and controlling those frequencies physically with a waveguide. That's what it's intended to do. We're able to beam and force the direction, controlling the direction of those frequencies. Why do we care? Why is that a big deal? Well, a lot of us have realistic rooms and we don't have a dedicated listening room. Maybe we have a weird room, an L-shaped room, or rooms that are just not made perfectly for listening to loudspeakers. And you know what? That's where controlled directivity is going to be a huge help, because when it comes to setting up those loudspeakers and getting just a great center image, a big wide soundstage that sounds realistic and sounds natural, that is exactly what these are going to bring to the table. And it is one of the very first things that I noticed is you kind of just plop these down and you've got a performance in the room. And I like that a lot about the JBL HDI-3600s. So I want to talk about top end extension, and I also want to fold in upper mid-range, and yes, even the heart of mid-range, all in the same listening impressions segment that we're going to be chatting about. I normally don't do that, but I think it's important that I do it with these speakers because I've noticed something about their mid-band performance, upper mid-range, and top-end extension, that they all have this one trait that is worth chatting about. And the key word here, folks, is presence. Let's unpack this for a minute because, well, we have to define what does that mean? What does presence mean? There is a liveliness, kind of a spark that you get out of compression drivers with waveguides, where the presentation of the soundstage is gonna move forward. You kind of have this front row type of a seat to the performance, and that is certainly something that I've experienced with the JBL HDI-3600s. If you want to hear what a song sounds like as if you were in the jazz club or you were sitting in the front row of the rock concert, I think these do it. But they do it with style. And what I mean by that is when you have a forward presentation, what we're calling this kind of presence to the music, where everything is just kind of, you know, up and hanging out in the room with you. Well, sometimes when we don't have a balanced frequency response, when something is tilted up, or we have some stored energy that we need to worry about, and no, we don't have any stored energy that we need to worry about with these, not that I could find anyways, or we have resonances going on inside the, you know, inside the loudspeaker where something is being lit up and vibrating and making noise, or we have cone breakup. All of those things lead to, with this presence and this kind of forward presentation, it leads to the dreaded listening fatigue. We have something that now sounds shouty, bright, too forward, in your face, kind of edgy. We don't want to hear that. No way. And when I say these perform with that presence with style, what I mean is we're not hearing any of that nasty stuff. Gotta give props to JBL with this, because whenever I listen to these loudspeakers, I have a tendency of wanting to rock out, and I want to continue rocking out. And that's a good sign. It means there's nothing about this loudspeaker that is ripping my head off, and it sounds so forward that I just can't do it anymore. Fun is one of the key words that I landed on when I did the sound clips with commentary with these speakers, and it's for a dang good reason. It's because they are a very fun speaker to rock out with. Now, another thing that I want to mention when it comes to anything that is in the time domain, we can see on the frequency response of these speakers that they extend all the way out to 20 and beyond. And at 20, there's quite a rise in the response, and I don't know for sure what the heck is actually going on with these drivers. Is it anything that you should be concerned about? I don't think so. We're talking way out there, past the point where most of us can even hear. And what I noticed about these is they do offer things that we describe on our channel as in the time domain. What the heck does that actually mean? It means that we're hearing the ambience and the thing that is in time after the fundamental hit. So you have that crack of the cymbal, and then you have the decay and the shimmer that lasts after it. When does that get cut off, and how deep into the room can you hear these types of, you know, time domain type subtleties? These do it. And this was one of the things that I quickly started to latch onto as I was digging into like a lot of acoustic material or stuff that is very percussive, that has a whole lot of cymbal work. I was finding myself saying, I'm clearly able to hear stuff bouncing off walls, ambience, little subtleties in the music, little nuggets of information that all too often a lot of loudspeakers, it just drops off like a rock, and you're not hearing deep into the recording. And with the HDIs, I had no problem of hearing all the information that I would ever want to hear in the time domain. And that is a huge, huge bonus to the HDI 3600s. Upper mid-range, I want to talk a little bit about electric guitars, and I want to talk a little bit about sibilants, S's. This might be the only time where I started noticing, okay, I think I'm hearing a little bit of that waveguide. It's certainly not this. Make no mistake, it's not that. And I think that in the event where I had a bunch of you guys over and you were to hear these speakers, if I had the speaker grills on these, I think half of you would be shocked that there's even a compression driver and a waveguide. So kudos to JBL for making that thing vanish. With that being said, I have noticed that on, specifically with upper mid-range, the top end of female voices, S's are a little bit more pronounced. There's gonna be some times where things can sound just a little bit spitty, just a little bit more forward and a little bit more aggressive than some other designs out there. You know, this is just gonna be something that you're gonna have to decide, Is that gonna bother me, or do I actually like that particular trait? Is that S poking out every now and then, is it actually realistic sounding to me? And I can't decide that for you. I really can't. This is where things get very subjective. I didn't find it distracting. I embraced it. I embraced it with this kind of presence and lively presentation that we've been talking about, that's just a part of the package. You're gonna have to wrestle with this one. It didn't bother me, and that is the honest to goodness truth. Is I was like, it's fine. This is no big deal. This is just part of this sound, this kind of lively type presence that we've been chatting about in this review. Now I want to talk a little bit about electric guitars, because there was another thing that I noticed as well with the 3600s. First of all, for the most part, these love, and I mean love, electric guitars. They have snap, they are exciting. It is, like I said early on, it is fun to just rock out with these speakers. At the same time, I think you do need to know that there will be some times where I am convinced I'm hearing a little bit of that waveguide. It might be a particular frequency band, it could definitely be music dependent, but there's times where I'm like, that sounds like it's coming from the speaker. And whenever that illusion of the soundstage is broken, you know, where that vanishing act of the speakers is broken, it's kind of a deal for me. You know, I mean, that's something that I have to take note of. Is I don't want to hear speakers in the room ever. I just want to hear a performance. And while for the most part, if we're talking about the tone of the electric guitars, awesome with the 3600s. It's so lively and fun and engaging. But again, depending on where those frequencies sit, there were times where I felt like I know where the speakers are. And that was a little distracting every now and then. So something worth mentioning and something that you should know. So what about the rest of all of the instruments that are hanging out in the entire arena of upper mid-range? Strings. We haven't even talked about strings. We haven't talked about horns, brass, the brass section, Ron. What the heck does that sound like on the JBLs? It sounds freaking awesome. That's how it sounds. I am certainly not a huge jazz buff by any stretch of the imagination, but whenever I did listen to any kind of jazz material on these, anything with a sax, with a trumpet, anything brass related, I gotta say, it sounds awesome with the 3600s. And if I was to take a guess, if you are really big into jazz and you've already tried Klipsch and you've already tried some JBLs and you're big into compression drivers and you're just wondering, hey, is this gonna bring the party without listening fatigue? The answer to that question is that's exactly what they're going to do. All right, so as we drop into the heart of mid-range, male vocals, female vocals, from that, let's just say 100 hertz up to around 800 hertz, 700 hertz, the heart of mid-band, everything dancing within that region. What can you expect from these speakers? As I said at the very beginning of this review, and we've been talking about it since then, and you probably have listening fatigue, by now, you're gonna hear presence. When the singer steps up to the mic, female, male vocals, there's just something about it just right there. It is just Johnny on the spot every single time, and it is a very exciting type of a presentation, and it's something that I fell in love with and I want to celebrate as one of the key things that I think a lot of folks are going to like about the 3600's staging capabilities, putting you front row with the band. You're just hanging out. You've got them in the living room or the listening room with you. That's exactly what you can expect. What you're not going to hear and what you're not going to experience is a crappy cabinet. You're not going to hear additional bloom in the male vocals. You're not going to hear that. I can promise you that. You're not going to hear the cabinet walls coloring the sound of any kind of male vocals. I'll tell you this much. Mark Knopfler is not going to sound like Barry White when you listen to these. It is truly a straight line performance when it comes to male vocals. And that is exactly what I experienced. Whether I was indeed listening to Barry White sounded the way that he should. If I was listening to Mark Knopfler sounds the way that he should. If I was listening to Eddie Vedder sounds the way that he should. And their voices are clear, they're concise, and I was happy with how these speakers were voiced in the heart of mid-band when it came to male vocals. Another thing that I really liked about the HDI 3600s, and I talked about this in the sound clips with commentary, is anything acoustic, yes. Yes is the answer to any question that you have about, well, Ron, what about acoustics? Yes is the answer. Dude, you guys play anything with acoustics, Ben Howard, Eric Clapton, it doesn't matter. You dive into Gregory Alan Isakov. Any fans out there? Holy smokes, when you play acoustics on these speakers, that presence, that kind of lively type presentation that these speakers bring to the table, it is so much fun and intoxicating, and I couldn't help but just getting lost in acoustic track after acoustic track. And you know what? The same thing can be said about anything percussive. Anything with a really interesting rhythm section, you're in for a treat with these. No doubt about it. Let's go ahead and combine mid-bass and bass. This is gonna be the hardest part in this review, and I wanna make sure I get this right. So bear with me. I'm gonna speak from the heart here. On one hand, I love the bass performance that I'm able to get out of the JBL HDI 3600s. And what I mean by that is there is a confidence in the bass that I can appreciate. And you will probably end up with more bass than what you need. Do you need a subwoofer with these? I don't think so. I never found myself saying, what I really need is deeper bass. I didn't feel that way. JBL has you spec down to, I think, 38 Hertz, and I believe JBL. When it comes to their bass performance, I was really pleased with clearly being able to hear every single note. So if we're listening to an upright, and typically that's what I go to is, can I hear every single note? And more than that, are any of those notes waking up this cabinet in a way that is a distraction? Are we hearing the cabinet resonating, kind of like blowing into a Coke bottle, if you will? That's probably a bad example, but it gives you an idea. But is this cabinet waking up in a way that we don't want to happen? The answer to that question is no. So, on one hand, JBL has done a great job with giving, you know, what I would say is an accurate picture of all of the notes. Everything is in order, and nothing is jacked up to the point where we need to have a different kind of conversation in the review. Nope, not at all. Nothing wrong with the bass, the overall bass performance out of the 3600s. Why do we need to have a heart-to-heart, and why am I saying this is going to be kind of the harder part in the review? I believe, and I am convinced at this point, that the cone material of a loudspeaker matters a lot. And I don't want to paint the picture of aluminum drivers is a bad decision. I don't feel that way at all. And I think that getting what we're about to talk about out of a loudspeaker, it has been my experience that it is easier to do with a different material than aluminum. And what we're going to be discussing is what is called texture and tone in bass. So there is indeed resolution and clarity in bass. And when you hear it, you can't unhear it. You know it's there, and then you crave it. You're like, I want to hear when that snap happens on that upright bass, which is typically up higher, the snap of the string, right? But then the vibration, and then the body, the cavity of the body of that upright starts to wake up and starts to craft the note that we're hearing. I want all of it. I want to hear clearly the tone of that upright bass. It is the one thing about these speakers that I was just wanting a little bit more of. I was just feeling like you're giving me the note, and the note is there, and it is there with confidence, but I'm not getting as much clarity or definition in that initial attack. No resonance that I can hear. We have a cabinet that was engineered well, it's properly braced, and we can hear every single note, no problem. And they can drop bombs, no problem. I just wish that you had a little bit more definition and clarity mid-bass and bass. So I want to talk a little bit about Soundstage. We've already talked about this throughout the review that yes, we have this kind of front row type of an experience. There's some presence in the music. Everything has this liveliness to it. That is all totally true. At the same time, I do want you to know that you can, for the most part, make these speakers totally vanish. So even though you're gonna have everybody hanging out in the room with you, it's not a situation where everything is being played from the speakers. No, you're actually gonna have everybody in their correct spot. And when it comes to the capabilities of width, how wide these things can spread their wings, they do a fantastic job with that. You're not gonna get the same depth that you can get with some other designs. So again, think of it as just kind of this arc in front of you, this semicircle of musicians that are hanging out. Of course, this is dependent on the recording, you guys know that. But if it is mixed well, you're gonna get that illusion. Only every now and then, the S's and female vocals, some electric guitars might break that illusion, that soundstage magic that we all crave, might break it for a moment. It was never distracting enough that I thought we really need to talk about this for 20 minutes. And so we aren't gonna do it. What I am gonna tell you is these absolutely can stage, they can disappear, you can do it. I would encourage you to use lots, and I would also encourage you to consider crossing the streams. I have done an entire video that walks you through how to do this. Anytime you have a speaker with a waveguide or a horn, I think you should consider doing it, and that video is down below. So in the end, what do we have? Well, we have a speaker that I can recommend just as long as you understand what it is that you're gonna get with these guys. And what you're gonna get and what you can expect is some presence, some liveliness, some fun in the music where you're in the jazz club, you are in the front row of the rock concert, and on top of that, you're not gonna be listening to this, nor are you gonna be entering listening fatigue because JBL doesn't know what the heck they're doing and they're trying to lift up the top end and do a whole bunch of other wonky stuff like play around with resonance. No, this is a company that absolutely knows how to engineer a loudspeaker. They're doing it right, and this is an easy recommendation if that presence and that liveliness in the music is something that you crave. Harman, JBL, thank you for sending out the 3600s. It was a pleasure to review these speakers, and send me something else. Let's keep dancing. Let's have some more fun. And folks, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I certainly do appreciate it. Make sure you remember to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and we will see you guys in the next video.